The government is banking on infrastructure development to drive economic growth, increase connectivity, as well as deepen trade between Kenya and regional countries. The Kenya National Highways Authority is one of the agencies mandated to help in the achievement of these overarching goals. Joining us tonight on Inside Government is Engineer Wangai Ndirangu. He's the chairman of Kenya National Highways Authority. He's going to explain to us what is their role and how they're planning to implement the project under their mandate, despite the challenges of COVID-19 as well as funding. Thank you so very much indeed for finding time to be with us. Tell me things, when you look at all the projects that are in the pipeline, some of them, of course, they are under implementation. And this is a discussion we were having with you earlier on. What is this one project you would say is going to change the way we communicate, in terms of infrastructure in this country?
Right. Many thanks, Kimani, for finding time to join us here. And that's a very difficult question for a very good reason, that perhaps we have number of projects that are very transformative in nature. But if you allow me, I would actually perhaps mention three of them, and one of them is the Nairobi Expressway. It's right at the heart of the Nairobi city. It is the first PPP project. It's going to be a tolled road, and it's going to combine the elevated roads on toll, will maintain all the lanes that are currently existing on grid, and beyond that we are going to add a BRT lane. That means then we're also looking at the mass transport system within Nairobi town. The second project that I think will also transform this greatly is the project that is upcoming between Isiolo and through to Modagashe, to Elwak and Mandera. I mean, it's opening up a completely new corridor and changes the way communication to the northern Kenya happens. And I think for me the third project is the project under the Mombasa Port Area Development. I think for many years we've had a challenge communicating between the south coast and the north coast and the Mombasa Island. The connectivity that has been a problem for more than 50 years is now clearly in the next very few years, 2 years or so, be a thing of the past. I think it's just to mention a few. I could actually name 10 more, but let me keep it to 3.
You're applying the principle of keeping it short and simple. I mean, you have just talked about one of the projects, and which is just directly opposite me, and this is the Nairobi Expressway. Launched last year, at a cost of 60 billion shillings. There has been a lot of discussions and talks about it. Can you first of all help us understand, at a cost of 60 billion shillings, I mean, this would qualify to be one of the most expensive per kilometer road construction in this country. One may want to understand why, and bearing in mind that, there was no acquisition of space. And then number two, there has been the talk about, the tolling system that is going to be applied. We would also want you to give us some light in regard to that.
Many thanks again. First is for us to understand when you talk about 60 billion shillings project, is not just about the construction cost, it's about the project cost. This money is sourced is actually a private developer who is undertaking this project so that they can recoup their cost and profit through tolling. So the 60 billion relates to cost of money, to relate to the project preparation and so on and so forth. So we need to see these as the cost in the longer term. The second important thing is to realize that this is the first time I think during President Kibaki era we did the construction of Thika Highway. It brought about the era of superhighway, roads that have very rapid access. And what we are seeing now is we are pushing the level of road development to another level through the PPP. So before I even see the huge cost, is to look at what is the benefit. And the third thing, and why this is also very important, is that for many years you look that we have done corridor development along what we call the Northern Corridor, the road from Mombasa through Voi, Machakos, Nairobi, Nakuru, Kisumu, and Malaba. And if we keep on using public resources to develop roads along the same corridor, it means then we are denying other deserving parts of the country, and which need to be improved in terms of coverage the resources. So by allowing an opportunity where private sector funds can deliver the same level of service and can maintain the road, it reduces our resources to take care of other parts in the country. And that's really what's happening.
You've touched on Thika Road. I mean, this is the most ambitious, I think, road project ever undertaken in this country. One way you're talking about 50 kilometers, another way you're talking about 50 kilometers, and so combined you're talking about a length of about 100 kilometers, constructed at about 30 billion shillings, minus or plus. So how would you make somebody understand why 100 kilometers of Thika Road combined will cost 30 billion shillings, and a 27 kilometer on Nairobi Expressway would cost about 60 billion?
Indeed. When we look at the 100 kilometers on Thika Road, first it was completed in 2012. That's 10 years back. I think the cost of construction across has basically gone up since that time. When you think about how much you used to buy a house, for example, in 2012, and compared to what it is today, you'll find it's perhaps 2-3 times. So that's the first thing, that is the natural, inflationary cost that arises. The second thing is when you think about one, that Nairobi Expressway, 50% of it approximately is elevated. So you can see all those kind of columns that are coming up. And they are going, by the way, quite a bit of they are drilled several kilometers, I think almost about 20 kilometers below ground. So this is what we are seeing on the surface, is what is buried to ensure that it's a stable. 7 kilometers? 20 meters down. 20 meters down. Just to reach the hard surface that can support that kind of a road. Beyond that, then we are using concrete for about 50% of the road. We have columns spaced at every 12 meters. So that's quite a different type of cost. Secondly is that we are not just looking at the road, the bitumen, but we're also looking at the the interchanges. And one interchange, it's quite expensive. It's different from Thika Road, because where everything was on the ground, or what we call in engineering is on grades. We are having toll stations, we are having traffic operation centers, so it's quite clear for us why this is happening.
The BRT.
The BRT.
Mm-hmm. When you look, at that model of business, and also bearing in mind that the government is also planning to start the construction, and I'm talking about the Nairobi Area Metropolitan Authority, NAMATA. They're planning to construct a BRT system, from Athi River, all the way to city center. And also the planned railway system from JKIA, to city center. All these are, of course, geared to removing as many vehicles from the road as possible. So is this a good business model for the expressway?
Absolutely. Let's remember that the road through Athi River up to James Gishuru and Rironi is one, or even in the bypass, if you like, is part of the what you call corridor A, the northern corridor. And so we have still very many transit vehicles that need to go through to the Western Kenya and beyond the border. So whichever way, we are not eliminating this. In fact, in a big sense, the expressway then targets also these vehicles that ought not then intermingle with the other vehicles that are doing the urban mobility. The second thing is, and this is really even why we should be much more relieved, is that the revenue risk is not being borne by the Kenyan public. The developer is coming with their own money. They are putting it into the projects. If they earn a revenue, they pay themselves. If they don't, there is no, the loss is theirs. It's purely a commercial undertaking. The only thing that the government of Kenya is providing is the land on which this is being constructed. So I would say that I think it's a very good deal for the Kenyan people. Yes.
And also talk about, this is, it would qualify to be the largest project under execution through a PPP model. I know discussions, dates way back to 2012. And we saw the financial closure, last year, culminating with the project construction. What lessons, have we learned that we are going to apply in future projects that are expected to be executed under the PPP model?
I think for me there's a few, and I'm happy that you talked about Namata, because yes, with the corridor that we are developing, actually BRT, we are doing it in cooperation and conjunction with Namata, the Nairobi Metropolitan Transport Area Authority. And one of the biggest lessons is the power or the effectiveness of coordination within government. And I'm really, I must say it's a very good direction we have received from the President about the approach of the whole of government in resolving challenges that we face. And we for many times we've seen the issues of securing the right of way for the contractor, the site, if you like, or relocating services taking many months. But in this project, in about 9 months, all that has been cleared, and really the ways available for the contractor. The second thing is that it has also unleashed the unhindered power of the private sector. And I can promise you that from 36 months that was initially envisaged, now we are talking about completing this project within 24 months, perhaps even less. You can look at the speed, because then we are not constrained with issues of payment, and there is able to be more value engineering. I think starting from mid of this month, you'll start seeing the precast beams coming to site. So we are able to prefabricate part of the road project or the road components away from the site, therefore minimize the disruption to traffic. We shorten the time so that again the disruption to road users is much less. And of course the third thing, which for me is even more important, it has convinced us that private sector roles in road development. KeNHA, out of about 22,000 kilometers of road that is under our mandate, only about 10,500 are paved. So we need to really release that money that we're using for maintenance to go and pave area roads, particularly in the eastern part of the country, in the northeastern part of the country, and the southern part of the country around Narok and Kajiado. So the PPP model is really a new and I think an efficient way for government to achieve the development in infrastructure much faster, more efficiently, and in partnership with and also embrace other skills and abilities outside government. Yes.
Okay. And what about the Kisumu-Ahero highway?
Yes, I think likewise. I think we had a contractor, the Kisumu-Ahero interchange, Kisumu-Mamboleo and Kericho interchanges. And I think the contract again had challenges discharging their duties, and so we had no choice but to terminate their contractor. And I think as we last month we have another new contractor who is doing all the 3 interchanges. So again, I think that's to be done within 12 months, and that is fully mobilized now. Yes, in fact, in this last week, I think a number of our officers have been there just seeing that the contractors are mobilizing in good time. Yes.
Because these delays, and engagements and disengagement, with contractors, of course it comes at a cost to taxpayers. How do we cushion, taxpayers against, this kind of, unforeseen cost increases in future projects?
First to say that, look, when you think about the portfolio that we are discussing, about 500 plus projects, or nearly 500 rather, having 2, 3 or 4 projects that are having some bit of challenges, it's a very small percentage compared to the total. And really, that's precisely why we have contracts in place, because we anticipated the unforeseen. And the most important thing is that we have mechanisms in place to deal with this even when they occur. I think you'll agree with me, in majority of our construction, we are seeing a smoother flow. So to that extent, but however, we are a learning organization. In fact, every time this happens, we sit back as an authority and ask ourselves, how can we avoid this? It's precisely what you're saying. And we draw lessons, and we are being a bit more strict in the way that we are evaluating the contractors we are engaging. In fact, it would please you to know that whenever now we have a contract, we are taking every effort to verify each and every document that we receive with regard to staff, financial position, experience, just so that we ensure that we have the right people with the right history to undertake our projects. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Let's talk about how coronavirus is likely to impact or has impacted the rollout of some of your projects. What has been the impact on project implementation because of coronavirus?
Yeah, I think I think it's been very, I don't want to say difficult, I want to say different times. First, because the normal interactions that, as we know them, having site meetings on face-to-face, and therefore you can physically, as a oversight team, see what is happening, has been more restricted. I think the working hours, especially in the initial phase of the lockdown, was also quite limited. But we must also thank the Ministry for Interior, because I think whenever we raised need to to address the movement or to ease a movement for the teams doing construction, that was really helped. However, and I think this is the experience I want to draw, that I think readiness is the best preparation for any emergency. For us in KeNHA, we do not wait for situation to arise to tackle them. We have an emergency readiness framework, and I don't think for a moment, for example, we had the virtual platforms, both for across in position even before COVID. So when actually COVID came, it took us less than 2 weeks to actually roll out. That also meant that our staff who are working from home, we've had actually meetings of the entire authority staff on a virtual platform. We've had our board meetings on a virtual platform right from the day one. So I would say that I think our teams have worked very efficiently. We actually have seen a lot more work being delivered. I mean, for example, the expressway, we are talking about 20% being achieved entirely throughout the COVID season. So I would actually say that I think readiness is the best cure and the best remedy to avert disruptions. I think for me, the corona disruptions have helped us to be more innovative. It has helped us to uptake technology more readily. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let's also talk about a project that has been in the offing for decades now, and I'm talking about the construction of a bridge, the Mombasa Gate Bridge. I know last week there was a pronouncement that the construction is expected to start next year. Can you paint for us a picture of how the whole project will look like?
Allow me to go back a bit, if you may, to the whole development around Mombasa. And I think we've seen in the last 3 or so years and very exciting projects around Mombasa. And one of them is the Dongo Kundu project that just goes a little bit along next to the airport, along the ocean. And I mean, it has been a game changer. We've seen the opening up of the port of the airport, the link road to Mombasa Airport. We've seen the dualling of the road from Kilindini all the way to Mariakani. Now, and so the next phases we are having, first of all, is to have a road, an elevated road or a bridge across the ocean from Ukunda, more or less, coming and joining the phase 1 at Mariakani. So that in itself has also already changed the way we commute across to the south, Mombasa South, and the south coast rather, and the rest going up country, the island up country. The second thing that we have seen is the Likoni footbridge, which I think the president has been very keen and has again given us the motivation to undertake. And I think in another 2 weeks from now, by mid of December, we should have human traffic, this open to human pedestrians going across. I mean, again, that's a game changer. Now, two things that then we are looking at. One of them, of course, that you see when you look at the Likoni Bridge, it's only for better pedestrians. So we would like then to also see vehicles also traversing across the Likoni Channel without necessarily using the ferry. And so what we're going to have is a bridge that that is high enough to allow the vessels to come to Kilindini, but again also not so high as to interfere with the aircrafts that are coming to the airport. So we hope that by next year and leading into 2025, we should have that project fully implemented. Allow me to also mention that when you think about the Mombasa area, one of the construction areas that we seeing is around Makupa Causeway, and first of all, in terms of the traffic, and secondly also in terms of the ocean flow. So we would like to, and actually we've just signed a contract today that allows the vessels, the construction or reconstruction of that bridge. So it's an exciting, area work that is going on around the Mombasa city.
I want to take you back to last year. Not last year, but this year in July, where a public investment committee, called forth the investigation of a number of state-owned parastatals for misappropriation of public funds, as well as projects that do not give a value for money to the public, and one of them was KeNHA, and a number of projects were mentioned in that document, and PIC was calling for the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to come and audit some of those projects with a possible prosecution of officers found to be culpable. I first of all want to hear from you. Was there an engagement between, PIC and KeNHA, before that report was released, and has there been any development since, that report was made public and that appeal was made by PIC?
I think one of the things is that I think for us as an authority, we have been very committed to the highest level of integrity and actually accountability of the staff in this authority across. Not only to Parliament, but it would actually interest you to know that we have very, very regular consultations with a number of stakeholders in a way that allows us to receive concerns where work is happening. Yes, we have engaged PIC. It's the same way with every other parliamentary committee, and I think over time, because of our engagement, we were able to demonstrate that perhaps it's just more of a misunderstanding than any actual loss, and the fact that is attested by the what we have delivered for the public. So I really want to assure everyone that there's nothing really to worry about KeNHA and its project and value for money for the public.
When you look at exchequer funding, when we were talking about 57 billion shillings in the 2021 financial year. And when you look at your project portfolio, you're talking about 450 plus in a project. How has, lack of sufficient funding, delayed the execution of some of your projects?
Right. The first thing is, it's a fact that one, money is never enough, and two is that a number of our projects are multi-year. So we initiate a number of projects in anticipation of revenue and flow, both from donor and from exchequer. This particular year has been quite, interesting in terms of, the whole working environment. Let me say this, beyond the development projects, we also have the maintenance project, and I think one of the best decision ever made in government was to ring-fence the maintenance money. In fact, I think the people who are doing our project will tell you that they don't have to wait at all for their invoices to be settled. However, when it comes to the development, perhaps even the bigger constraint has not even been so much about the flow of cash, of capital, of finances, as to the associated challenges of clearing the corridors in time. I think land matters have become very emotive in this country. Quite a bit of time for us to give the level of service we require. We need to acquire the corridors and in time. And that then means that we find ourselves in scenarios where the cost perhaps goes beyond what was intended. We've seen a few cases of also many of these contracts are denominated in foreign currency, and so a bit of changes in the exchange rate also has an impact on how on the final project cost. The need, appreciating that the road sector beyond increasing mobility also has a contribution in terms of growing enterprises. It also has a role in ensuring decent employment. And that in mind, two things that we have done at the authority is to enforce the clause on 40% subcontracting as a mandatory requirement for any foreign contractor working in this country, so which ensures then that the interaction between our local contractors and foreign contractors and the skill transfer that happens then builds the future of contracting in this capacity. Similarly, with the professional staff, that not only do we see people engaged at the lower cadre, but also involved at the top, the senior management of projects. And finally, also, we are actually having more than 200 interns. These are fresh graduates who need the experience to be able to secure their place in the job market. And we are also taking that seriously. I mean, it's really asking that, yes, we have good capacity right now, but we need to ensure that this capacity is sustained in the years to come.
Very well. Thank you very much, Engineer, for finding time to be with us.
My pleasure.
Very good. Engineer Wangai Ndirangu is the chairman of KeNHA National Highways Authority, joining us on Inside Government to help us understand some of the projects they are undertaking and what impact they will have on Kenya going forward. You have heard it from him. My name is O'Brien Kimani. This has been Inside Government. Thank you for your time. As always, we'll do these again on Thursday. Have a good night.